Mom kicked me to the curb when I was just 17, all because I came home late one night. Now she's got the nerve to say I owe my sister a kidney, that it's the least I can do. Emma's kidneys are going kaput, and so is everyone's memory, apparently. It's crazy how a health crisis is supposed to bring families together, if you can even call us a family. But the stuff that keeps us kinda connected feels more like guilt than any actual love. The phone rang at 8:30 in the morning, right as I was about to pour the last drop of decent coffee into my mug. Mom's voice was raspy, frantic, and totally out of the blue. "Nancy," she blurted, "it's your sister. Emma's kidneys are failing. You need to get tested. You're her only hope." No, hi, how are you? No pause, no nothing. Just straight to what she wanted from me. Need, that's always been the word, hasn't it? I feel more like a spare body part than a daughter they actually give a damn about. My hand just froze while I was pouring, and coffee spilled everywhere, burning my wrist. That burning was more real than anything she was saying. It had been 3 whole years since I last talked to my mother. Not since that Thanksgiving I was dumb enough to go to, when they ganged up on me in the kitchen and blamed me for the cranberry sauce being too sour. Like I even went near that stuff. And Emma, I hadn't seen her since Dad's retirement party. She went on and on about family values while I sat by myself at the back table with a cold piece of chicken and my own thoughts. So there I was, supposedly on my deathbed, and the phone rings. They expect me to drop everything and run like some kind of obedient puppy, as if nothing ever happened. I feel like I owe them something, you know. The weirdest part? I wasn't even shocked. I've always been the backup plan, the just-in-case girl, the one they keep around but don't actually love. It started early, this whole thing. Emma was the golden girl, perfect grades, cheer captain, Dad's little princess, and Mom's mini-me. Bows, ballet slippers, always the biggest piece of cake. Even on my birthday, it was me with the scraped knees, messy hair, and a million questions. Emma was all sunshine and rainbows. I was a disaster. When she broke her leg at 13, I gave up my summer camp money so they could get her a private tutor. I didn't even complain. Then she dropped out of college, blamed her boyfriend, and they paid for her to start over at some community college in Arizona. When I got a scholarship to a state school, nobody even helped me move in. Now they need my kidney. "It's the least you can do," Mom said, her voice all shaky like she thought she was being so caring. "After everything we've done for you." Those words hit me like a ton of bricks. What the heck did they do for me? Did they kick me out when I told them I was depressed? Did Dad blame me for Mom's affair, needing someone else to yell at besides her? My birthday cards were either late or non-existent anyway. I let her have her say, you know. She really knows how to twist the knife, moms do, trying to guilt you into doing what they think is right. It's crazy everyone thinks I'm heartless, a total ice queen, but I'm not. I learned a long time ago that showing weakness is just asking for trouble. After we hung up, I didn't cry, didn't yell, didn't even throw anything. I just sat at my kitchen table, nursed some cold coffee, and stared at the wall for a while. Then all these memories flooded back. Like that time Emma swapped my science project at the last minute and took the credit. Or when she told Mom I stole her bracelet and I got suspended for 3 weeks. And prom night I got stood up and she laughed until she cried. I thought about all those dinners where my opinions were apparently too strong, and all the car rides where I was told to shut up. After everything she'd said, after everything they'd done, the right thing would have been to tell her to go to hell, hang up, and block her number. But I didn't. That's just not how I'm wired. I need more than silence to just cope. So I called the hospital and asked what I needed to do. They explained the tests and I told them I'd be there, completely calm. When I walked into the clinic, I even smiled at the receptionist like I wasn't about to start playing a really long, serious game of chess. They took my blood, ran the tests, and said the results would take a few days. "Sure," I told them, super happy to help out, even though in my head I was already miles away. Because here's the deal, they forgot that they spent my whole life teaching me not to trust them. They never cared about me for 1 second. And now they wanted something from me, a piece of me, my body, like it was nothing, like it was theirs. I said yes, but not for the reasons they were thinking. People say that memory is tricky, like a fish that gets bigger the more you try to grab it. But in my family, memory isn't fluid, it's selective. They don't remember the bad stuff, the things that make them look bad, and they hold on to the good stories that make them look like heroes. But I remember everything. I remember the bleach smell on my hands after scrubbing the bathroom Emma never even touched because chores weren't for perfect girls who got straight A's. I remember Mom saying, "The weather is calming," and then, "You're lucky we even kept you," and nobody even asked what that meant. I remember Emma fake crying when she got caught stealing earrings, and then me apologizing to the security guard because that's what a good sister does. People think being the black sheep is about being rebellious, like you're the crazy one who broke the rules. But sometimes you're the black sheep just because you came along after the golden child and there's no more room for you to shine. I never got a second chance at messing up. If I failed, it wasn't like, oh, honey, it's okay. Nope, I got kicked out. I got a B- in algebra once, and suddenly the whole family was having a meeting about it. Emma, she flunked 3 classes senior year and got a trip to Cancun, to chill out. She totaled her dad's car when she was 15 and nothing happened. Sweet 16? New car. Meanwhile, I was 17 and I got the boot for coming home late. Late, with a guy who wasn't even my boyfriend. I didn't lie, I didn't drink, I didn't even touch him. But at 1:30 a.m., Mom was there, arms crossed, jaw tight. "This house has rules, Nancy," she said, real calm. "And if you can't follow them, maybe you shouldn't live here." No shouting, no drama, just gone. My bag was packed, no ride home, no way to explain it to my friends. Dad didn't even pick up the phone, he just sat there glued to the TV like the news was gonna give him parenting advice. I slept on one couch, then another. Finally, I found a basement room, moldy walls, a landlady who smelled like stale cigarettes and bad choices. Community college, 3 jobs, coffee shop, cafe, bookstore. Not exactly glamorous and definitely not easy. I saved every penny like it was gonna run away if I blinked. I built my life out of spite and that powdered coffee creamer stuff, you know? While Emma just floated through life like she was wrapped in a giant bubble. She's still living at home with Mom and Dad. Can you believe it? She's 34, and her biggest achievement is getting a blue checkmark on social media for posting yoga videos with inspirational quotes she didn't even write herself. Meanwhile, I built a whole business from the ground up, paid off a car older than her ex, and went a whole decade without hearing, "We're proud of you." Not even when I bought my first house. Not even when I sent Dad a birthday card every single year, hoping he'd actually reply. He never did. What really got to me like a splinter under your fingernail was how they all just assumed I'd donate a kidney to Emma, like I was on call, waiting in the wings, like they hadn't just tossed me aside like a discarded coat after a party. No conversation, no heartfelt apology, just the same old guilt trip from Carol. "It's the least you can do after everything we've done for you," she says. I actually laughed. I really did, because it's so ridiculous. What exactly had they done for me besides teaching me how to cope with their emotional crap? Emma once promised to pay me back double for the $40 she borrowed for a sweater or something. I got 15. She said it was double, 'cause 15 is double 40, apparently. I should have seen it coming then, but I didn't. Or maybe I did and just buried my head in the sand, like ignoring that dripping pipe. You tell yourself it's nothing until the whole ceiling caves in. Everyone was stunned, you know? So when they called and said her kidneys were failing, I didn't fly off the handle. I didn't break down in tears. I didn't react at all the way they probably thought I would. I just went quiet like a lake right before a big storm hits, and I made an appointment. I told the hospital I'd get tested, and I did. They prodded me, took blood, looked inside me. I answered all their questions in this flat, even voice like I was just acting in a play I never even tried out for. Then I went home. I poured myself a drink and just stared at the papers on my desk. I didn't call Mom. I didn't text Emma. I didn't say a single word, because that's when I figured it out. I wasn't mad anymore. I wasn't even hurting. I was making plans. When you've been left alone for so long, when people treat your body like some kind of storage unit for their needs, you stop begging to be loved and start getting ready to fight back. I got tested the next day, and then I did something they never would have seen coming. The package sat on my nightstand, this silent bomb. It felt heavier than the paper it was made of, heavier than all the things they'd tried to use to choke me. The paper was in my hand, all clean and clinical, and it said it right there. I was a match. Not just a match, a perfect one. Like my body was just sitting around, waiting to rescue the person who'd spent her life in a quiet, sneaky way hurting me. The nurse was all smiles, like this was the best thing ever, like I should be jumping for joy that I was the answer to somebody's prayers. I said thanks, because that's what you do, and walked out of there feeling calm. I had to fake it though, like putting a lid on a pot about to boil over and pretending the hissing wasn't pure, simmering rage. I didn't call anyone. I didn't even shed a tear. I went home, made myself a whiskey with way too much ice, and started writing. The first sentence was easy. It had been in my head for ages. "This is not a letter of apology," I wrote, taking my time, putting my truth on the page. Then the words just poured out. I wasn't writing it for Emma. Hell, I wasn't even writing it for Mom. I wrote it for myself, for the girl who was never heard. They tossed that teenager aside. They just assumed the grown-up would give and give, without a single thank you. I wrote about that time I was in the kitchen, with bruises on my wrists from when Emma slammed me into the wall, and Mom said not to make a big deal because my sister was having a hard time. I poured out my heart about that night I got canned, and then found out I couldn't even crash at home because the guest room was occupied. I wrote about all the birthdays they just ignored, all the compliments that were really digs, and every time they acted like I was some project to be fixed, not someone they loved. Then I wrote about the kidney. It wasn't ever really a request or a heartfelt ask. It was a demand wrapped up in that whole family values thing, and they acted like I owed them a favor, like I hadn't already bent over backward for them, no questions asked. By the time I was done, that letter was freakin', 7 pages, single-spaced and printed in a huge 12-point font. If I had to read it out loud, I wanted every single word to hit them like a ton of bricks. I folded it up real slow, like it was some kind of treasure, and stuck it in a plain white envelope. No return address, nothing fancy, no heads up. It sat on my nightstand while I practiced it like I was putting on a show, because I wasn't just going to read it, I was going to perform it. I could already picture their faces. Emma would probably wrinkle her nose like something smelled bad. Mom would probably get all stiff, like someone called her out on a flaw. And Dad, if he even bothered to show up, would stare at his shoes, hoping the floor would save him from picking a side. In the meantime, I kept playing my part. I was nice. I was quiet. I was the Nancy they always dreamed of, you know? The one who just smiled and didn't say anything back when Mom would make those little digs about how simple things were before everyone got so touchy. I brought Emma her soup. I held her hand through all those dialysis sessions. I listened to her cry, terrified of dying, and I was so patient. When she finally passed, I wanted to just yell into a pillow, and every time she said thanks for everything, I'd smile and say, of course. Of course I'm saving your life. Of course I'm doing the only decent thing I've ever done for this family. Of course I'm giving up a piece of myself so you can keep living. But they didn't know. They couldn't even begin to imagine that I wasn't actually giving them my kidney. I was offering up a reckoning. I couldn't sleep at all the night before the surgery. I just lay there, the envelope right beside me. It felt like a loaded gun, and I thought about how it would all play out. The nurse would come in and ask if I was ready, right? I'd nod, trying to seem okay, trying to breathe evenly. Emma would be wheeled in first, and Mom would be there, hovering like a crow in beige. I'd get up, hold out the envelope, and say, before we do this, there's something I need to read. They thought they were getting a transplant. I was gearing up for a reckoning. The morning of the surgery, it hit me like a punch to the throat, sharp, dry, and totally awful. The air hung heavy, thick and still, like it knew something I didn't, a storm brewing, ready to unleash hell. I woke up before my alarm even went off, my heart pounding, my hands trembling. It wasn't fear, though. It felt more like pure, exhilarating excitement. After all these years, being the invisible one, the background noise in Emma's amazing life story, this was my moment. And I was gonna grab it with both hands. They herded us to the hospital at 6 in the morning, like I hadn't already been wide awake for hours. I just paced, replaying that letter over and over in my head, each word a nail hammered home. Then I walked into that pre-op waiting room, all scrubbed and prepped, squeezed into those pale blue scrubs that smelled like disinfectant and sheer terror. I felt every single eye on me, like I was a magnet stuck to a giant nail. Carol looked at me like she was about to cry, hug me, and apologize, all at once, this crazy cocktail of emotions. George, of course, was just a statue of total indifference, arms crossed, mouth tight, no eye contact whatsoever. Emma was in a wheelchair, and she looked smaller than I'd ever seen her, which is saying something, because she usually takes up a lot of space, if you know what I mean. Then there were all the others, the usual suspects, family, friends, the kind of people who only show up for the drama, never the boring cleanup. The same ones who plastered on huge smiles at Thanksgiving, whispered mean things about Nancy under their breath, and cackled way too loud at Emma's jokes. So there we were, all lined up, like we were about to see some miracle. But none of us knew it was gonna be a crucifixion, just not the kind you read about in the Bible. The nurse wheeled me into that prep room, usually a madhouse of clipboards and hushed voices trying to pretend they don't slice people open for a living. They asked if I was scared, and I just shrugged. Nope. Seriously, I felt calmer than I had in ages. I had something they didn't, a secret weapon, loaded and ready to go. That envelope was tucked away in my hospital bag, hidden inside a hoodie I hated. If anything happened to that letter before I got to read it, I'd have torched the whole place, I swear. They put us in this waiting area, all pale green and fancy, probably cost some designer a fortune to make it look peaceful. Emma squeezed my hand, her eyes all red and shiny, and whispered, "Thank you for doing this. I know I don't deserve it." Perfect timing, except it was 20 years too late and 50 lies too deep. Mom was lurking in the corner like a grumpy ghost, wringing her hands and muttering about family and what kind of person I was. And for once, she was right. I was showing them who I was, just not the way she thought. The doctor strolled in, a clipboard in his hand, grinning like he'd never met a woman who was ready for battle, armed with official paperwork. "We'll get started in a bit," he said, gesturing down the hallway. I just nodded, then slowly stood up, took a big breath, and reached into my purse. That paper rustling in that sterile room sounded super loud. "There's something I have to say first," I blurted out, not just to the doctor or Emma, but to everyone in the room. Carol, George, all the friends, the nurse, everyone who thought today was going to go smoothly. The chatter stopped, and you could feel the air thicken with anticipation, and then I pulled out the envelope. "I wrote something," I said, my voice steady but sounding foreign and exciting all at once. "Before we do this, I think everyone needs to hear it." Mom's face went completely white, like she knew exactly what was coming. Emma opened her mouth to say something, but I held up one finger, just one, and he got it. "Let me finish. You've had a lifetime of talking first." And then I started reading. I read every single word like it was the most important thing ever, like a confession, a trial, and a goodbye speech all rolled into one. I read about the hitting and the manipulation, the lies disguised as love, and the blatant favoritism. I read about how I almost dropped out of school because I couldn't afford books, while Emma got to fly to Aspen to clear her head. I read about being kicked out, lied to, ignored, and used. I heard this story about how my family had totally forgotten I even existed until they needed something from me. Their faces, they were like dark, stormy skies. Mom looked like she was gonna be sick. Emma was bawling, but I kept going. I read until the air felt like it was gonna ignite. I kept reading until everything in that room was just echoing with all the stuff they'd never listened to my entire life. Then when I got to the last page and it was curling up in my fingers, I stopped. They all just stared at me, waiting for what came next, the end, the part where I'd calm down and walk into the operating room and give them what they wanted. And then I said it. The last line, the part that hit them like a ton of bricks. I totally controlled the vibe in that place. Every breath just hung there, everyone's faces all tight, just waiting. And for the first time ever, they were actually listening. Not to brush me off or correct me or roll their eyes or try to sugarcoat what I was saying, but because I had something they couldn't ignore, something that just ripped the ground out from under them after all those years they'd been standing there like it was nothing. I took one last breath and read the last paragraph, so calm, the way you are when the bomb's already halfway to the floor. "I'm a perfect match, but I'm not donating because I'm done being the person you sacrifice." The silence that followed was crazy quiet. It was dead silent, the kind that smacks you in the face and leaves you reeling. The nurse might have dropped something, I don't know. I was too focused on Emma's voice cracking, her sob cutting through the air like a shard of glass. It sounded like she was the one about to kick the bucket. Carol bolted towards her, mouth open, ready to explode. And man, she didn't hold back. "You selfish little," she screamed, her voice trembling with a fury only a mother like mine could muster. Acting all high and mighty, completely avoiding any responsibility. "You've killed your sister. You think this makes you tough? You think you're being brave?" I didn't say anything right away. I let her words just hang there, thick and poisonous, because I wanted everyone to hear the unspoken truth. That even now, after I'd exposed every single wound they ever inflicted on me, they still thought they owned me. "Silence and sacrifice," I finally whispered, my voice quiet but steady. "This sets me free." And with that, I turned and walked away. I'm sure there was a flurry of activity behind me, nurses being called. Emma was crying and George was muttering, probably because he still didn't get what had just happened. But I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I was done. Each step down the fluorescent hallway felt like shedding this old layer of skin that had been holding me prisoner my whole life. It was like a slow-motion train wreck, everything getting worse and worse, day after day. The phone messages started that very night. Carol's was the first, a 5-minute rant, furious, regretful, begging, and then weirdly praising me all at once. She ended with, "God help you if she dies." Then came Emma's messages. They were all over the place, some crying, some screaming. One was especially creepy, just dead quiet, except for her saying, "You'll regret this. One day you'll see what you've done." George, he didn't call, not a peep. But someone, probably Mom, posted this huge, sobbing Facebook thing the next day, tagging every single relative and using the phrase "betrayed by blood" a million times. My inbox exploded with messages from cousins I hadn't talked to in a decade. Some people called me brave. Others totally blamed me for Emma being on a transplant list, saying my actions had pretty much killed her chances. One even called me a monster and said I'd die alone. That actually made me laugh because monsters don't spend 20 years crying themselves to sleep, wishing someone would just see them. Monsters are made, not born. You become one when you've been treated like one for so long that you just give up fighting it. But here's the thing nobody knows, something I've never told a soul. Not the nurses, not the hospital staff, not even the person who drove me home that day and asked, all nice and concerned like, "Are you okay?" I just sat there, staring out the window like I was watching a stranger's life go by. I'd been lying, plain and simple. I wasn't the perfect fit at all. Actually, it was a total bust. The results came back a couple of days before I got the letter, and they were super clear. I couldn't donate even if I'd wanted to. Emma's blood type didn't match, and the cross-match was a no-go. Medically, scientifically, I was useless to her. But emotionally, psychologically, symbolically, that was my magnum opus. Because I wanted folks to think I could have saved her, but I chose not to. I wanted them to feel the weight of their choice every single day, just like they made me carry their judgment. They're so subtle. You can see their favorites, their lack of interest. I wanted to make them deal with what if, the way they dumped the guilt for every mistake on me. They couldn't stand to be around Emma's perfect little neck. I kept the test results in my drawer for a solid week, folded between the letters' pages, like it was a secret only I could handle. One Thursday night, I pulled them out one last time, lit a candle in the kitchen, not for her or them, but for me, and held the paper over the flame until the edges curled, turned black, and drifted down like ashes from a burned-down house. Let them wonder. Let them gossip. Let them write their stories with me as the bad guy. I couldn't care less. I've been the villain in their version of my life forever, and now I get to be the author. Let them choke on that what if. It's just like how I felt about their silence all those years. Man, it really got to me. I'm glad you listened to the whole thing. It meant a lot to share this with you.